Okay, let's dive in. Today, we're opening up a piece of writing that feels incredibly intimate, almost like a memoir in real time.
Yeah, it really does.
It's the deeply personal reflection of a man trying to make sense of his own life, looking back from a point of, well, significant experience.
Yes, we're pulling insights from excerpts of The Passionate Friends, the narrator, Stephen Stratton. He's actually writing this specifically for his son.
For his son, right.
He's reflecting on his past, his relationships, his self-discovery, all set against a world that is, palpably changing around him.
So what's our mission here?
Our mission is to take this really rich material and sort of extract the core story, uncover those surprising nuggets of insight, and find the universal human feelings woven into this very specific individual journey.
And what really grabs you from the start is the urgency. He tells us he's writing this while details are rawly fresh, right? Prompted by a bitter tragedy and the loss of a friend as dear as life.
Yeah, he feels compelled to write because he says he has no one to talk to quite freely about her.
So this isn't just history looking back.
No, no, it's immediate, it's an urgent need to articulate something profoundly felt.
And it's fascinating that he's writing to his son, the man you are going to be.
Exactly. He believes his son is temperamentally altogether mine. And it feels like this almost desperate attempt to transmit wisdom.
To bridge those gaps.
Yeah, those amazing gaps he sees in how we understand each other across generations. Maybe, to help his son navigate life differently, avoid the same mistakes.
Speaking of those gaps, let's maybe start by unpacking some of the glimpses we get into his childhood.
Okay.
He shares memories that feel incredibly telling, like that of his father, once his greatest friend, he says.
But then later became ailing, suffering, showing this kind of impish malice he'd never seen.
Right, rambling about small, long-forgotten contentions and those amazing gaps he mentions, the fact they never talked about love or religion. What do you make of that?
Well, that lack of deep communication, it sets a really poignant tone for the whole reflection, doesn't it?
It really does.
He describes going through his deceased father's papers, intimate personal things, letters, yellowing scraps, that significant litter.
And discovering things he never dreamt of, feeling like he's prying.
Right, and he explicitly links those amazing gaps to the idea that each one of us was but a variation, an experiment, and how frustratingly little we managed to transmit.
So writing the book is his attempt to bridge that.
Exactly. It's a direct response to that frustration, an attempt to break that cycle of maybe misunderstanding.
And there's that specific, incredibly vivid anecdote about whipping his son, Stephen.
Oh, yes. For disrespecting Mademoiselle Patin in Kensington Gardens.
The son's line, I didn't seem able not to go on being badder and badder, and then their conversation afterwards. It feels really central.
It does. He calls it piercingly significant. It clearly touched his imagination.
How so?
It made him see his son's struggle not as unique naughtiness, but as connected to his own, his father's, his grandfather's, this idea of a pattern, maybe.
A pattern of human behavior.
Yeah, the extraordinary dreadfulness of misbehavior that seems common to all small boys, and the son's self-imposed sentence trying to be stoic.
And then trembling into yelping and weeping.
It's such a powerful image, isn't it? Justice and its emotional cost, something the narrator clearly wrestled with.
That sense of raw, underlying human nature comes through in another childhood memory, too. The one with the birds.
Ah, the thrush nestlings.
Watching them and then finding the stable cat killed them. His immediate reaction.
Yeah.
Pure rage.
Yes, that visceral, instinctual reaction is really stark. He calls it amazement and anguish.
And then striking the cat and feeling still glad to think of it.
Yeah, it highlights that raw emotional core beneath, learned behavior and societal rules. And he notes how hard it is to explain things of that sort to someone like Mr. Siddons.
His mentor, right?
Exactly. It underscores how separate these instinctual responses can feel from the rational world Siddons represented.
And Mr. Siddons sounds like a huge influence. Life as a career.
Totally. All focused on conventional success, statesmen, peerages, Westminster Abbey.
Holding up figures like Nelson, suggesting England has been made by the sons of the clergy.
Absolutely. This mentorship, it fundamentally shaped his early worldview, pushed him towards a very specific ideal.
The modest, reserved, sporting, seemly Englishman.
Exactly, that whole package. He later recognizes this as taking his intentions ready-made from the world immediately about me without really looking deeper.
And his education at Harbury seems to reinforce some of that. pushing him towards being stiffly correct.
It does, but you also get these quieter threads, don't you? His interests in history, geology, biology, things he felt he had to hide.
To avoid being a swot.
Right. And there's that sensitivity to beauty, the brickwork, the chapel, the clouds, even if he didn't consciously recognize it then.
So you see this early conflict brewing. The pull towards convention versus these deeper interests and sensitivities.
Definitely. Hints of a more complex person, just sort of waiting for something significant to bring them out.
Which is exactly what happens next. And that brings us to the dramatic pivot in the narrative, Mary Christian.
Mary.
He knew her first just as one of the children, but then, at 17, sees her again.
And it's like an explosion. He describes her in full flower as glorious and central as the Hampton Court azaleas. Just wow.
The connection sounds immediate. Her ample graciousness, but also that surprising directness.
Yes.
Saying,
I couldn't now smack your face like that, Stephen, using his first name. Sort of breaks the ice immediately.
And the description of her is so vivid.
Incredibly. The delicate skin, bright color, the whimsicality in her smile, saying faintly daring things with that little catch in the breath.
Her eyes.
Bright blue eyes that could turn black with mischief, her quiet rapidity. He even admits it's impossible to really convey her personal charm. It's something more.
And their conversations, they go deeper than anything he'd known before, especially with his father.
Right away. They talk about religion, and she challenges him, describes God as something very beautiful.
And she pushes him on his ambitions too, doesn't she? Asking if do some decent public work was all you want.
And this is where that core dynamic really starts. He admits, yeah, before her, that modest goal was all he wanted.
What now?
Now he says, I want you. But she immediately turns it back on him.
Wants him to want all the world.
Yeah, to conquer people and lead people. She even says that incredibly powerful thing about sometimes wishing she were a man.
In order to be able to be you.
It reveals so much about her own ambitions, her potential, and how she sees him as man, the protagonist of the world. It's intense.
But despite all this intensity, this connection, he felt they were impossible, matrimonially impossible.
Yeah, absolutely. He saw himself as impossible as one of the stable boys.
Because of class and money.
Crucially, money. He believed his potential earnings wouldn't suffice even to buy Mary clothes. A very practical, very stark barrier.
And that barrier immediately forces everything underground, doesn't it?
It does. Once he's at Oxford and she's in London, their letters become concealed, full of restraints and difficulties. He talks about the shadow of furtiveness falling between them.
Even the letters are held back. Dear Stevenage.
Right. Making small phrases feel like huge epistolary events. There are amazing gaps, weeks of silence. Yet he still feels she ruled his life, his ambitions, from afar.
Then years pass, and they meet again when she's spending a summer at Burnmore.
And this meeting is just layered with awkwardness, tension.
He sees her with other people, including Mr. Justin.
Right. And he picks up on all the social stuff. Lady Viping's gossip about Justin being a great financial cannibal and Mary a perfect Dresden ornament.
And he sees Justin looking tender with Mary.
It's a total contrast to their earlier freedom, isn't it? He feels reduced to the level of a peeping observer.
That social environment, the gossip, it really highlights the pressure.
Absolutely. And his jealousy of Justin is just palpable. He describes days where he can't work or rest, just prowling around, hoping for a glimpse of her. Shows how deep it still runs.
But they do manage secret meetings. The Ice House one is so memorable.
Oh, incredibly sensory. The dewy morning, that ragged, filmy carpet of gossamer, his soaking and discolored boots, you can almost feel it.
And it's in those stolen moments that the real conflict comes out.
Exactly. In the privacy of the Ice House, he realizes Mary did not mean to marry me.
She didn't want that conventional, heroic common cause.
No. And when he pushes her, don't you love me? Don't you want me? She says yes, she loves him, but then states that profound desire, I want to belong to myself.
Wow. That's the core of it, isn't it?
It really is. She pushes back against being tied oneself always to one other human being, becoming someone's certain possession.
While his response is totally conventional. If you love me, I want nothing better but to love and serve and keep you.
And it just clashes completely with her yearning for independence, for autonomy.
She actually values the secrecy.
She seems to. I love meeting you. I love your going because it means that afterwards you will come again. I love this slipping out to you.
And that room she has.
A room in the house that is my place, me, my own. Nobody follows me there. She wants to keep living just as I am living now. It's about preserving that core self.
And all this personal turmoil is happening while he's also figuring out his career.
Right, trying to reconcile himself to the law for political ambition, even though his father disliked it.
But Mary's influence makes him question that,
Yeah.
demands more actuality.
Yeah, it pushes him. He starts considering travel, opportunities abroad, rights to a contact. It shifts his path.
So she's pushing him away from the conventional route Siddons had set out.
Indirectly, yes. He's seeking more actuality, looking at the empire makers like Rhodes, maybe searching for a life that feels, I don't know, more real, less predictable.
Then there's that incredibly powerful memory of a night meeting, after she wrote asking him to come.
The rose bushes behind the pavilion, waiting for an hour, just filled with anticipation.
Describe that scene again.
Oh, it's described with this almost dreamlike quality. Lying on a bank of time, heads were close together, her eyelashes swept to my cheek, speaking rarely and in soft whispers, hearts beating, beating.
As solemn as great mountains and as innocent as sleeping children.
Exactly. Our kisses were kisses of moonlight. It feels like this moment of pure, almost perfect connection, totally separate from everything else.
Until the next morning.
Right, the awkward return, finding he'd locked himself out, that little touch of mundane reality crashing in.
But then, the real crash. The very next morning, Mary tells him goodbye.
Yeah, just like that. This indeed is parting.
He feels it's hateful, but she won't talk about the things that have happened.
No, it's not fair for you to talk of that. Just promises to talk afterwards, whatever that means.
And that abruptness just leaves him spinning.
Completely reeling. His distress leads him to write those awful letters, violent and bitter.
Accusing her of being cold-blooded, mercenary, shameless.
Saying she betrayed me, ruined my life. Looking back, he sees his love then as a demand, a kind of wanton claim.
But he's grateful she forgave him.
He is. He says, she understood my passion and forgave those letters and forgot them. Which maybe says something about her own understanding or perhaps strength.
Mary's marriage day. He describes it as just wandering and passionate unrest.
Tormented by his imagination. And then he goes to his father.
And bursts into tears, terrifying his father.
Yeah, his father fears he's done some foolish thing. It just highlights his pain, but also that huge generational gap again. His father just cannot compute that level of emotion.
And that leads to his decision to go to war.
Explicitly, he says, I want to get away. It's a desperate escape from the heartbreak, a resolve to begin life afresh and try to forget Mary. His personal crisis pushes him right into a global one.
So, South Africa,
Yeah.
the Boer War, he paints a vivid picture.
He does. Durban, Ladysmith, the dusty little street of huts, the great crests beyond, and witnessing death close up.
Reflecting on the stupendous absurdity of it, leading to theological arguments with himself.
It's a harsh reality check, isn't it? Takes him so far from London and Burnmore Park, physically and emotionally.
He fights in battles, Peter's neck.
Right, the surrender of Simon Botha, the crown of all my soldiering. But even amidst that, under the greatness of the sky on the veld, he starts seeing his own little trouble differently, questioning the whole game of war.
And after the war, the Repatriation Commission work, helping people return home.
He calls it hard work, but far less exciting than war, bringing suspicious, illiterate, despondent people back to their desolated homes.
Distributing stock, grain, sorting out plowing teams.
Feeling like a child playing in a nursery sometimes, putting the pieces back together.
But this is where his perspective really shifts, right?
Dramatically, he starts seeing the great economic realities that he feels people of his class just float over.
Putting a smashed and desolated social order together again.
It forces him to recognize these two sides to civilization he hadn't really grasped before. The traditional of the homestead, and the other, the side of labor.
And seeing the Rand labor issues firsthand.
Yes, the Kafir boy demanding wages, refusing to go underground, highlighting that profoundly suggestive fact that some people had to go underground while others didn't.
Making things like the working classes' industrialism, labor problems suddenly real.
Exactly. No longer just abstract phrases. They become stupendously real. He returns to England confused, initially trying to apply simple fixes like efficiency.
But the deeper understanding is there now.
It is. He starts to apprehend the wider issues, the secular conflict between the new forms of human association and the old. Seeing politics as just transitory eddies, this experience lays all the groundwork for his later thinking.
When he gets back, he finds his father in a new house.
Near Guildford, a place of gracious proportions, the dignified simplicity. His father's kept his essential atmosphere.
And they talk politics, but there's that disconnect again. His father disliking statesmen from Birmingham, and electroplated empires.
While the narrator, having seen more, wants something bigger than that, he argues the narrow focus on trade and jealousy of Germany comes from a narrow outlook.
But he feels awkward about it.
Yeah, a queer shame when his stepmother, Mrs. Moore, shows beautiful enthusiasm for his ideas, like he's maybe overselling himself or his vision isn't fully formed yet.
And around this time, he meets Rachel.
Yes. Described initially as a sweet white figure, most wonderful and beautiful.
But a different kind of love than for Mary.
Very different. As one loves and admires a white flower or a beautiful some stranger's child, he even finds making love a coarse thing compared to this almost worshipful feeling. And the Moores approve.
He contrasts them explicitly, doesn't he? Mary was like two rivers run together.
They had grown up side by side, whereas Rachel, he sought her, desired her, and chose her, very tenderly and worshipfully indeed.
But admits being artificial with her.
Yes, sustaining an illusion about himself, suggesting it took long years to escape the crippling tradition of inequality, implying it was perhaps built more on choice and convention initially.
After marrying Rachel, he starts the publishing company.
Alphabet and Mollentrev, with Gidding, his American partner.
Who he says has the knack of precipitating my ideas.
Right, and their work together is just massively ambitious.
Reprinting huge swaths of literature, the World Encyclopedia.
Aiming for the broadest and steadiest flow of publication the world had ever seen. It's his new purpose, a way to act on those bigger ideas he gained in South Africa.
And it's tied to that larger vision, the world state.
Explicitly, they see themselves as citizens neither of the United States nor of England, but of a state that had still to come into being.
So this becomes his driving philosophy.
Absolutely. Believing this world state needs to be conscious and deliberate and merciful, built on universal sympathy and understanding, to avoid wasting creative energy in conflict. It comes directly out of his own misadventure.
And then, after years of silence,
Mary writes to him.
The letter arrives while he's with Rachel. Instant tension.
Yeah, he says its presence brings the past back like a sunlit lake seen among mountains. Rachel notices, reminds him that they were not to correspond. Awkward doesn't begin to cover it.
But Mary's letters are crucial. We finally hear her voice, her perspective.
We really do. She asks about his publishing, but then dives into her thoughts on the future of the sex.
Seeing women as potential Goths and Huns if ignored.
Yes, arguing society is built on subjection to sex, even more than labor subjection, echoing his own realizations, but from her perspective.
And she describes her own life, despite the wealth, as futile entanglement.
The superficiality, 14 gardeners, spending thousands on clothes, the 45,000-pound yearly expenditure on just magnificence in our margins.
Seeing the collective insanity of it all. Women translating men's work into shopping.
Into a glitter of dresses and households. It's a powerful critique from the inside.
Her letters show this rebellion against my lot, against a lot of women.
Definitely. But she also questions if emancipation just means loafing or mischief, maybe even decay. It's complex.
But she still holds on to a formless faith. Drawn to religion, but stuck in the doorway.
Yeah, it shows she's still searching, still sensitive, despite the cynicism.
And later, letters talk about Change's estrangement from Justin, living apart, planning travel.
With Miss Summersley Satchel, her companion, her moral guarantor, writing about Italy, weeping at beautiful things.
Questioning why beauty has such power.
It all paints this picture of her internal struggle, her disconnect from her life, her search for meaning, that vulnerability is still there.
And then, completely by chance, years later,
they meet again in Switzerland.
He's hiking the Titlis, feeling lost, thinking of her, even imagines hearing her voice.
And then arrives late at the inn on the Inxlan Alp, and there she is, with Miss Satchel.
Talk about awkward.
Oh, absolutely. The attempts at casualness dropped out of the sky, using a pseudonym, dealing with Miss Satchel and her brow of ruffled omniscience.
But they manage a moment alone.
They do, and Mary sees it as maybe their only chance. The one chance that is ever likely to come to us.
Urges him to stay, says they're tired of letters, notes he's changed.
And that scene rowing on the lake... It's incredibly intimate, isn't it?
The beauty of the place, the shyness, despite everything. You are so you, and so strange, too.
Mary reflecting on life's disproportions, the little things that eat us up, the beautiful things that might save us and don't save us.
It feels like they almost reconnect properly there, sharing that sense of life's complexity.
It really does, a profound moment.
But he leaves, feeling it was the end. The sun had set forever.
And then just 3 days later, bang. The telegram in Milan.
Come back at once to London,
Yeah.
Justin has been told, resolved upon divorce.
Just shatters everything. Total chaos.
He meets Rachel in Paris. She guesses immediately it's about Mary.
Her reaction is described with such quiet pain, turning white, face very still, eyes just stared at the situation.
And noting that if Justin hadn't found out, she should never have known. Chilling.
Yeah. But there's also that strange tenderness he observes in her. It's complicated for everyone.
Then Mary arrives in Paris, says she can stop the divorce.
At a price. Insists it's a bargain with Justin, but not degrading. She has to give earnests.
And the price is devastating.
Just gut-wrenching. Never, dear, never through all the dusty rest of life again will you and I speak together. Never. That's her sacrifice.
Out of final choice to prevent the scandal.
And the narrator is clearly in agony, torn between Rachel and the children. They're yours.
Yay.
They're so deeply yours. And his enduring love for Mary.
Her final words to him. Dear love that I threw away in love too late.
So poignant. And then she leaves, firm, steady, but with that tear on her cheek. Just, wow.
And we know from earlier references that Mary dies sometime after this, the bitter tragedy.
Yes, and we get that later glimpse of Justin's perspective, talking to the narrator after her death.
Admitting, we tore her to pieces, that it was so damn silly. Driven by anger.
And he doesn't care if they were technically innocent that last day. To Justin, we killed her. What does that matter to me now? It's a really bleak acknowledgement of the destruction.
So reflecting on it all, the narrator struggles to capture it in writing. Mary remains like that sunlit lake seen among mountains.
Beautiful, but distant, maybe never fully understood. And he sees their relationship, and especially his part, as that struggle between instinctive subjugation,
His desire to own her.
and her passionate desire for fellowship, for independence.
And he identifies this conflict, plus the subjection to sex Mary talked about, as two essential riddles that confront our kind.
Exactly. He argues that social convention, that transparent, intangible, tacit purdah, makes honesty impossible and forces relationships into secrecy.
And his own misadventure, the falsity, the bitterness of the established code.
That's what ultimately drove him, this self-proclaimed daylight man, to advocate for social reforms, divorce reform, independence for women. His personal tragedy fuels his public purpose.
So this deep dive really takes us on quite a journey, doesn't it? Through one man's life, shaped by this defining love, loss, duty, a changing world.
You see that constant push and pull between personal desires and societal expectations, that deep human yearning for both connection and, well, independence.
And the narrator grapples with this idea of humans becoming articulate, but still leaving so much of the tale untold.
Yeah, feeling forced to repeat things done, yet he finds this larger purpose in the world state idea, this collective human effort, believing the real blocks are psychological, not economic.
But Mary's challenge remains, doesn't it? Can liberation really lead to progress, or just chaos?
That question hangs there, as she herself wondered.
And he asks his son, and really us, to understand these phases he went through: darkness, obsession, the struggle for self-respect, escape, and then reemerging with this wider view.
Driven by his own lived experience, his own pain.
It leaves us with some profound questions, really, about love, possession, freedom, the possibility of a better future.
Makes you wonder, doesn't it? How much are our own lives still shaped by these same tensions, these unresolved riddles about relationships in society?
How do we reconcile wanting to belong with needing to belong to ourselves?
And what price are we, still paying today for the weight of expectation for the established code, however it looks now? What does this mean for you today?